Thank you, Eric. My 2-year-old grandsons are just beginning to incessantly ask why. I remember this phrase from when my own children were about that age. Why, Mommy? Why, Daddy? At the beginning, it was usually in response to some parental instruction, like telling them to pick up their toys. Why, Mommy? Or that it's time to go to bed. Why, Daddy? And later on, their questions reflected their curiosity about the world. Why do I have to eat the broccoli? Why is that bird just lying there? Why is that little girl crying? I remember this phase being particularly challenging. What do I say when I don't know the answer? How much do I tell them about a dead bird? How can I explain the behavior of a parent slapping a child in the grocery store? And pray tell, how do I put an end to the seemingly endless string of follow-up whys? I reminded myself then, and I remind myself now, that questioning is a good thing. That it reflects a healthy response to the world. It is part of human nature that indicates intellectual growth. I reminded myself after the 5th or 6th or 7th iteration of why, answer, why, that so many problems of the world might never have been solved had someone not asked why over and over again, and why to each answer to go deeper. Maybe my child would someday discover a cure for cancer. Maybe my grandchild will discover a cure for greed. Our living tradition of Unitarian Universalism draws wisdom and stories and spiritual practices from many sources, including the world's religions. And many of the stories and traditions of those religions emerged, for good or for ill, from people's attempts to answer those profound why questions. I can imagine the Islamic creation story I shared earlier coming about in an attempt to answer some of these questions. Why must I take care of others when I can barely get by myself? Why are people so many different colors? Why should I conserve resources instead of just taking what I want for my own use? And maybe the biggest question of all, the biggest mystery of all, why is there even something here instead of nothing at all? Now, religious myths of creation supply their answers to questions of how this all began and why there were some rules set up in the beginning. And religious stories of miracles fill in the blanks, explaining, in a way, some of the mysteries of life. Now, if you take these miracle stories literally, a religion's myths can be compelling. Wouldn't it be amazing to behold Jesus curing the blind man's vision? Or Moses parting the Red Sea as he leads his people to freedom out of slavery in Egypt? Wouldn't it be awe-inspiring to witness Shakyamuni Buddha turning the arrows slung at him into flowers? Or Muhammad ascending into heaven from the Dome of the Rock? But it seems to me that miracles of this sort are rather few and far between these days. But miracle is one of those religious words that can have a lot of meanings. To those ancient peoples unaware of what we now call natural laws, miracles were where they saw God at work. And later in history, with the discovery of natural processes and the articulation of natural laws, miracles became understood as events that could not be explained by those laws. But we have explained so many things that used to be mysteries. And because we have explained so much, many are confident that given enough time and effort, we can explain all the rest. So are we destined to live our postmodern lives completely devoid of miracles? Completely barren of wonder and mystery? I would find that a very sad state of affairs, and I don't think it's necessary. Even for a Unitarian Universalist, even for a scientist, even for a non-theist. Certainly, science has explained a lot of what used to be mystery, but that doesn't mean that life is devoid of miracles. The word miracle comes from the Latin mirari, meaning to wonder. And even the Catholic dictionary defines miracle in a general sense as a wonderful thing. And the first of the 6 sources of our living tradition that is listed in what we commonly call our principles and purposes, it's listed before all of the world religions, and it's listed before the words and deeds of other people. The first source is direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder. This is the source from which we get to take a stab at answering the why questions of life. So a life full of miracles is just a life full of wonderful things. But we only experience them as miracles if we choose to. Scientist and philosopher extraordinaire Albert Einstein explained it this way. There are 2 ways to live, he said. You can live as if nothing is a miracle. You can live as if everything is a miracle. I choose the latter. Now, many people find mystery and miracles in their everyday experience of the natural world. Transcendentalist poet Walt Whitman famously wrote, "I believe a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars. And the pismire is equally perfect, and a grain of sand and the egg of a wren. And the tree toad is the chef d'oeuvre for the highest, and the running blackberry would adorn the parlors of heaven, and the narrowest hinge in my hand puts to scorn all machinery. And the cows crunching with depressed head surpass any statue. And a mouse is miracle enough to stagger sextillions of infidels." And sometimes we experience wonder and mystery in human relations. I understand that this church just celebrated its 18th year as a liberal religious light on the prairie. That is a wonderful thing. That you have cared for one another and for this faith enough to endure 6 moves and 7 different locations, that you come into this secular space and make it sacred each week, that you have kept going through the hard times, both personal and institutional. Congratulations. A wonderful thing. A miracle. The thing is that we all relate to wonder and mystery of miracles differently. And that's okay. It's good even. Because if you take a look at the closing paragraph of our principles and purposes, as they're written in the bylaws for the Unitarian Universalist Association, you'll find this statement: "Grateful for religious pluralism, which enriches and ennobles our faith, we are inspired to deepen our understanding and expand our vision. Well, usually when we talk about religious pluralism, we're referring to the fact that no one religion has a monopoly on truth and meaning, or on authentic spiritual practices, or on a path to salvation, or even what the definition of salvation is. That some people may lead ethical lives full of compassion and inner meaning by following a Christian or a Jewish path. Others by taking a spiritual journey based on Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, humanism, or Unitarian Universalist principles and teachings. But there is another kind of religious pluralism, an understanding that no one style of spiritual journey has a monopoly on authentic spiritual practices or on a path to liberation. No one style of relating to the miracles and mystery we encounter along the way. There are at least three different styles of relating to mystery and miracles as we experience them. And while these styles may describe different people, they also, I think, apply to the various ways that any one person responds to mystery at any one time. I know that I move back and forth and in and out amidst these styles. I wouldn't presume to confine myself or anyone else to just one style of spirituality. One of my other favorite Walt Whitman quotes from Song of Myself is, "Do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large, I contain multitudes. Multitudes of ways of dealing with the mysteries of this world." Now actually, I didn't think these spiritual styles up. These ways of being religious were described more than 2 millennia ago in one of the most beloved Hindu scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita. The Gita, as it is often called, is a lyrical poem embedded in the much larger work, the Mahabharata, an epic composed some 2,500 years ago that tells of the battle between the forces of good and evil. And while the Mahabharata as a whole relates the military and cultural battles that are legendary in India, its smaller chapter, that is the Gita, concentrates on the inner battle of every human being, the struggle for self-mastery, salvation, and freedom from suffering. The struggle between good and evil within ourselves. The Gita describes 4 approaches to spirituality that can each lead to self-realization, and these are called the 4 yogas. Now, the word yoga here is not used in exactly the same way that we usually think about it in the West. The breathing patterns, physical postures, and exercises that usually come to mind when we think about yoga are useful techniques on a spiritual journey. But yoga, as it is used here, is used in a much broader sense. It comes from the root word yuj, which means to yoke or bind together. And what is bound together in the 4 yogas are all of the seeming dualities that we normally experience, like self and other, body and spirit, temporal and eternal. The 4 yogas that are described in the Bhagavad Gita are Jnana Yoga, Raja Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Karma Yoga. Now, a person who is drawn most strongly to Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge, relies heavily on the intellect and the will to gain an understanding of self and of the world, to follow a spiritual path, to uncover universal organizing principles. Their spiritual practice may be studying. This is a person who likes to solve mysteries. When they look at a starry sky on a moonless night, they wonder about which stars and galaxies and other heavenly bodies they are seeing. They want to learn about astronomy and maybe about space exploration or the possibility of life on other planets. They may identify the constellations and then go look up the Greek and Roman myths behind them. The person who responds this way to the mystery of the night sky is moved to a renewal of the spirit and openness to the forces that create and uphold life by learning as much as they can about the physical heavens. When a person who follows the path of knowledge encounters the miracle of a loving religious community that thrives against all odds, they want to know more. They want to know more about that congregation and about that tradition, so they read books and they peruse websites and they ask questions to determine if this is the religious home they have always been looking for. In our UU tradition, with its emphasis on reason and intellect, a lot of people respond to mystery with this jnana yoga approach. Is this the kind of spirituality that most appeals to you? The second way of responding to direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder is by savoring it. This approach is related to Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion, and Raja Yoga, the path of harmony. People who are drawn to Bhakti Yoga are moved by the transrational, and they see beauty and personal experience as central to their spiritual journeys. And those interested in Raja Yoga are much more interested in process than results. Do you know any people like this? They're more interested in relationships than individual needs. When these people gaze at a starry heavens, they just breathe it in and savor that feeling of oneness with the universe. They marvel at the beauty of a nebula without caring much about the physics. They appreciate that they are looking at the same stars as the ancients, and that makes them feel connected to all people across the ages. When they come in to a religious gathering like this one, they pay attention to how they feel. They're sensitive to the connections and the caring, and they know intuitively that they are welcome here. Maybe this is the kind of spirituality that moves you. When I was thinking last week about these two kinds of responses to mystery, solving or savoring it, it occurred to me that this concept applies to a rather trivial and mundane activity that I'm currently engaged in. Now bear with me, I know that this illustration is insignificant, and it's kind of a hokey play on words, and not at all spiritual, but it works for me, and maybe it will for you too. You see, I am currently rereading a series of mystery novels that takes place in Boulder, where I live. I read all 20 books as they came out between 1991 and 2010. And the first time I read them, I was focused on the mysteries themselves, interested in whodunit. But this time, I already know whodunit. I already know how each one of them turns out. This time, I am enjoying the experience of reading them. This time, I am paying more attention to the characters and their relationships and the descriptions of the places that I know. The first time I read these mysteries, I was looking for solutions. And this time, I am savoring them. And both of the experiences are good. Now, neither one of these responses is better than the other. They're just different. They're examples of religious style pluralism. They are both valid primary responses to the encounter of mystery and miracles. And they can both be precursors to a third response, a response that is related to karma yoga, the path of works. This is where we put our experience of mystery and wonder to work in the service of Unitarian Universalist principles. I think that this path comes naturally to some, and I think it can be learned by all. When we are moved by the beauty of the natural world, whether it is the night skies, an oceanscape, or a mountain top, on the path to karma, it challenges us to put that experience to work by committing to protect the interdependent web of all existence, the air we breathe and the water we drink. When your heart swells at the sometimes annoying and always endearing curiosity of a child, the Karma Yoga path asks that you commit to promoting justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, and to supporting policies and programs that give every child a fair chance at a successful life. When you feel the wonder of belonging in this religious community, the path of works prompts you to do what you can to promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and religious freedom for all people. Let us honor our own unique experiences and responses to mystery and wonder, and those of others. And let us be enriched by the different responses around us, to savor them, or solve them, or both, and then put ourselves to work. May it be so.